Imagine you're lying in a hospital bed. It's late, the room is quiet, and then a cat walks in. You didn't ask for a cat, nobody brought a cat, but somehow, this cat found your room, jumped up onto your bed, and won't leave. The nurses aren't surprised. They've seen this before, because this cat has done this before, and every single time it does this, the patient dies within 4 hours. Now, the easy answer is coincidence, or body heat, or smell, or some comforting story we tell ourselves because the alternative is genuinely uncomfortable to sit with. But here's the thing. The alternative is exactly what we need to talk about tonight, because this isn't one cat, this isn't one hospital, and this is not one species. That question, do animals know when you're about to die, sounds like a ghost story. It is not. It is a question that runs right through the edge of everything we think we understand about consciousness, biology, and what dying actually is. Let's go. Here's what this question is actually asking. Not whether animals are psychic. Not whether they have some supernatural gift we don't. What it's really asking is this. Is death something that leaks before it happens? Does the body begin signaling its end before the end arrives? And if it does, are animals simply better at reading that signal than we are? That reframe changes everything, because now we're not talking about magic, we're talking about biology, about senses so finely tuned they pick up information our instruments are still learning to measure. And here's the thing, the evidence is not thin, it is stacked. Let's start with the most famous case because it's the one that forced science to pay attention. Oscar the cat lived in a dementia ward in Providence, Rhode Island. Starting in 2007, doctors and nurses began noticing that Oscar would curl up beside patients, and only those patients who died within hours, not days, hours. He did this over 50 times, documented, published in the New England Journal of Medicine. Staff eventually started calling families when Oscar chose a room because they knew what it meant. Now, the researchers didn't say Oscar was psychic. They said something more interesting. They said Oscar was likely detecting ketones, chemical compounds released by cells as they break down in the final stages of dying. Dying, it turns out, has a smell, a specific biological smell, that we cannot consciously detect, but that a cat with a sense of smell 14 times more powerful than ours absolutely can. Let that sink in for a second. Death doesn't just arrive, it announces itself, chemically, quietly, long before the monitors start beeping. And here's where it gets interesting, because Oscar is not the outlier. He is just the most documented example. Dogs have been trained, formally, clinically trained, to detect cancer before imaging equipment can. A 2019 study found dogs identifying lung cancer from breath samples with 96.7% accuracy, not sniffing tumors. Sniffing breath. The body advertising its own crisis to any nose paying close enough attention. Elephants famously travel miles to visit the bones of their dead. They don't need to see the animal die. They find the bones later and stand over them. Silently, sometimes for hours. We don't fully understand what they're processing, but they are processing something. Here's the part that stopped me. There's a species of dog, and this is documented across multiple studies, that can detect seizures in epileptic patients before the seizure begins. Not during, before. 15, sometimes 45 minutes before any medical device registers a change. The current theory is that dogs are detecting tiny shifts in body chemistry, micro changes in sweat, breath, electromagnetic fields that precede a neurological event. The dog knows something the patient's own brain has not yet consciously registered. Let that sit for a second. The animal is aware of what is happening inside your body before you are. If that is true for seizures, events that are survivable, the logical extension into death is not a leap. It is a small, uncomfortable step. That is not nothing. Now, here's the honest counter-argument, because it deserves to be said. A lot of these stories are anecdotal. Oscar is compelling, but 50 cases, even documented cases, is not a randomized clinical trial. Confirmation bias is real. We notice the times the dog acted strange before someone died. We don't catalog the times the dog acted strange and everyone was fine. That's a legitimate concern. But here's where it gets complicated, because the cancer detection studies are controlled trials. The seizure prediction studies are peer-reviewed. The chemical signature of dying is not theoretical. We have identified it, we just can't smell it ourselves. So the question isn't really whether animals can detect biological decline. The evidence for that is solid. The question is how far upstream that detection goes, how early, how precise, and that, honestly, we don't fully know yet, which is its own kind of answer. But here's the thing nobody tells you. This question isn't just about what animals can sense. It's about what death actually is and when it starts. We think of death as a moment, a flat line, a timestamp on a certificate. But biology doesn't work that way. The body doesn't switch off. It winds down, slowly, across hours, sometimes days, before the end. Cells changing, chemistry shifting, the whole system quietly broadcasting what's coming. And animals, because they are not distracted by language and thought and the 10,000 mental loops humans run constantly, are simply present enough to hear it. There is something in that worth sitting with. The idea that the dying are not alone in knowing, that something in the natural world is paying attention, even when the people in the room are too overwhelmed to. This isn't just about animal senses. It's about the strange mercy of being witnessed by something that doesn't need to understand. It just knows. None of that is coincidence. Here's what this means practically. Hospice programs around the world are now actively studying animal-assisted end-of-life care, not because it's sentimental, because patients report that when a therapy dog enters the room, their anxiety drops in ways that medication doesn't always achieve. The animal isn't pretending. It's not performing comfort. It is responding to something real in the room. And for the families, the ones keeping vigil, exhausted, not knowing when, sometimes the cat choosing a chair near the bed is the only honest signal in the room. I'm just saying. So, back to that hospital room. Back to that cat on the bed. Maybe it's ketones. Maybe it's electromagnetic fields. Maybe it's something we haven't named yet because we haven't looked carefully enough. But here's the image I can't shake. For all of human history, long before hospitals, long before monitors, we died surrounded by animals, in homes, in fields, in the dark, and maybe the dog lying at the foot of the bed wasn't just loyal. Maybe it was the only one in the room who already knew, and chose to stay anyway. That's not a ghost story. That's just what it means to be alive and to be paying attention. Good night.